All right, here we go. Our fancy new open. It is Tuesday, January 17th, and if it's Tuesday, it can mean only one thing. It's time for Comic Book School Live, and tonight we have a very special guest, a working pro that you've seen in the past on past shows and at live events, and this will be episode number 3 of 3, where we talk about how to take control of 2023, own it, and meet your goals. I want to be able to introduce you to my very special guest and good friend, Joe P. Illidge. No, it's Joseph P. Illidge, but we can call you Joe.
Definitely. Good to see you, buddy. How are you?
Oh, I am really good. Let me just pull up this graphic because I think it's pretty awesome. This is a little bit about you, Joe. I'm going to show the graphic. It includes your website, Joe. You are well established. I would say probably most established, at least in the professional community, for your long tenure as an editor at different publications and different publishing houses. You're executive editor at Heavy Metal and currently writing up a storm and publishing like crazy. And people can learn more about you at josephillidge.com. Joe, what else did I miss? I mean,
that was quite
to narrow it down.
I'd like to give a special shout out to a well-known writer and a great human being in the comic book industry named Greg Pak. Among his various superpowers, he's also a great photographer, and he took that shot of me last fall, and my wife saw it and said, "You have to make this your definitive headshot." So when your wife tells you something, you do it. And that day, that became my headshot across all my social media profiles. And past that, just really staying busy. The new year is off to a great start. And it's funny to be able to be here tonight. Part of the reason was actually because I was able to look at my Google Calendar and I saw that I did not have a commitment for this time slot. So you were able to just scoop right in, and then we put it right in there. So happy to be here.
Thank you for joining on short notice, Joe. It is a very meta comment that you checked your calendar. We'll be talking about calendaring today. And you have a very special announcement that we'll get to at the end of the show. So for those of you who sometimes bail out a few minutes early to go run to your car and escape the crowd early, you're not going to want to miss Joe because he has a pretty big announcement. Is that right, Joe?
That's correct.
All right. So, Joe, we're going to be taking on part 3 of a 3-part series, and we're going to cover what we have covered in the previous 2 episodes so that people know what to look for in other YouTube episodes that are all on the Comic Book School YouTube account. If you're not subscribed, you should right away. We already showed this slide. We're going to jump right past that. This episode, Joe, is about using tools to meet your goals. And tools can mean a lot of things. And I should also note that these tools will help you reach not just your professional goals, but it'll also help you a little bit in life. And being organized in your life does nothing but good for you. So in 2023, on the last two episodes, we talked about SMART goals, your 6 personal goals, your top 5 goals, and your tools for pros. So what does that mean? We want goals that are SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. If you haven't seen the first episode, definitely go through it. We'll review the SMART goals with you. In the next episode, we went through documenting using your notebooks, which if you're following along, and you certainly are, I hope, you documented the things that are important to you. This isn't just comic books. This is pretty much everything, and comic books fit into your financial, your spiritual, your family, your mental, physical, and your philanthropic. And those are all very important things that we want to make sure that we're covering, because it's the whole you. And then the last but not least, if you remember the top 10 things that you want to accomplish, you write down those 10, those burning 10 that come to you, and then you cross off 5, because ain't no way you're going to do 10 big things this year. Managing that is extremely important. And then in this next one, we're going to learn how to say no, right, Joe? You got to say no to certain things. You can't default on yes. But real quick, Joe, I mean, you probably have to say no more than most of us, because people need, you're an editor, you're a publisher, you're
Right.
how important and how difficult was it for you to learn the skill and develop the power to say no and not worry about alienating people?
It's extremely difficult because as a freelancer and independent contractor, so you're basically a company of one running your life, there's a fear that if you say no too many times, the offers are going to start coming, right? So, and we're talking about a time now of a lot of economic uncertainty. We just came out of 2022. A lot of companies spent December not throwing Christmas parties, but actually laying off people in the hundreds and the thousands. And so we come into this year with a bit of uncertainty. And one of the conversations that is actually happening throughout the industry is the economic realities of the industry, knowing your worth, and taking a realistic assessment of if you're able to actually have a life in this industry. And part of that involves saying no to some offers, the offers that don't meet your needs, the offers that do not give you what you require or value your skills in a variety of contexts. Saying no to those, it's important because it lets people know that you have a line, and it actually opens the door to negotiation. One of the things that I've learned is that the first offer you're given is usually not the best offer. I can't think of an organization that offers the best dollar amount first, right? And so being able to say no, not just saying it, but knowing how to say it. You don't have to be a jerk about it. You don't have to be obnoxious. Saying no is actually opening the door to further conversation. No is not necessarily closing the door.
You know, and I think, Joe, that's a hugely important point. It doesn't close the door. It might be no for that offer. It might be no for now. It might be no, you know what? I'm not cut out to write the Hello Kitty comic book. I just might not
That's
be
right.
the right person.
That's right.
You know, when you're starting out, you have this fear that, like you said, well, if I say no to the Hello Kitty comic book, I'll never write again. It's not true. You just might not be the right person for it.
That's it. That's it. And it's good to have that self-awareness, because if you take something just for the money and you don't sincerely feel that you can do a great job at it, the work is going to show. That's going to hurt you. That's going to hurt your client, right? So it all matters in the end.
Yeah. So that gets us back to where we want to be, which is, you know, we need to learn how to say no to projects that are not nurturing us, enriching us, fulfilling us. from any number of reasons, but go back to your list of what's important to you, your philanthropic, your personal, your health goals. Go back, and that's how you determine if you're going to say yes or no. Now, in this case, I wanted to talk with you about tools to meet your goals for your comic book career and life. And Joe and I talked about it a little bit in advance of the meeting, very little. I mean, Joe really did come on in very short notice, and thank you for that, Joe. I wanted to start with something really easy, Joe. Everybody, not everybody, but most people are familiar with Gmail. The part of Gmail that I'd like to focus on are some of the extra features. The extra features that are along the left rail, you'll see the arrows pointed at them right now, and I'll zoom in really quick, and I broke them up. You can label your mail, Joe, and I don't know how frequently you do this, but I do label everything. So, for example, Joe, when an email comes in from you, I have a color code for it, and I also have a label for it, so I know it is a comic book professional who is contacting me. And Joe, you're also an editor at a publication that pays real American dollars. So there's a priority to that, and you get an important label as well, right? Like there is a method to this that I have found is extremely helpful for Gmail. I use Outlook in my day job, but in my real life, I use Gmail. So I use a lot of labels and folders and organization, but also alerts to let me know if there's somebody that is important that I need to hear from. I want to know that they have reached out to me. Joe, do you ever use any of these tools in Google?
I use starred every day. Every day I star something. One of the things that I do throughout the week is if I find articles that really intrigue me, but I don't have the time to do the deep dive, I send them to myself. And as soon as they pop up in my inbox, I star them. So on a Sunday morning, I'll just go to starred and I'll see all these different articles. And that'll basically be my reading list for Sunday morning into the afternoon.
So you email yourself the articles?
100%, because, you know, articles only have a certain amount of shelf life in any digital publication. So I have subscriptions to the New York Times, Forbes, Business Insider. So even before I have breakfast in the morning, I check the New York Times. I check the front page of the New York Times, and I check the business section, the New York section, sometimes the art section, and maybe I'll read one article, but if I see others that really intrigue me, I will email them to myself and I will star them.
Now, as a successful freelancer, do you use labels and stars and folders to categorize your email at all? Because I don't know how many people do that. I know that I'm a little obsessive about it. Do you use that at all?
I don't really use folders a lot. For me, there's the star system. And then when I'm dealing with clients or when I'm having conversations with business people or peers in the industry that we could be working on some projects, that's when I immediately set up appointments in Google Calendar. So Google Calendar is something that I look at every day in the morning. So I know, okay, this is what my day looks like today.
Joe, you're like my T-ball coach. You just put the ball on the tee and we're going to hit it over the fence, because right now we're going to talk about Google Calendar. Now, looks like the graphic for Comic Book School is covered over it, but what I'm pointing at under that screen there is you can do a pull down for week or month. What I want to point out right here are my calendars, Joe. On the left, what Google gives you this amazing ability to do is to check on and check off and color code calendars. So like before, I'm just going to zoom in real quick. If you're looking at the calendar in the left rail, prior to this, I had birthdays and reminders and tasks. Now we'll come back to reminders and tasks, which are built into Google Calendar, and I kept on holidays because I want to know when there's a national holiday. In this case, I have a comic book school calendar. Now that is checked on, and then what that will do is remove anything that I don't want to see, so I have a really clean view. If I were to switch to a month view, I could see at a month, I could see at 6 months, I could see it a year, all the things that are related to this magenta colored comic book school check mark. Is this something that you use? You just said you check your Google Calendar every day.
I use reminders, but I don't use it in this method. Basically, any given appointment that I set up, I usually create 2 reminders. One reminder will be 24 hours in advance, and the other reminder will be anywhere from 1 to 4 hours in advance.
Oh,
So
I
when
love it.
I'm setting up the appointments in Google Calendar, I automatically have 2 reminders.
Oh, I'm glad you talked about that, because we're going to show that right now, Joe. So imagine you're in this comic book school calendar and you have a specific deadline. As let's just say you're a freelance writer, you're writing a graphic novel as you do, and you want to just have the calendar for that specific deliverable. What you can do, and you can see I'm in the checked box on the left. I can check on any of these boxes, or I can create additional calendars specifically to the project. Comic book school, people who joined us for the 8-page challenge. Remember, we had a shared calendar with about 30 or 40 people, and they were able to subscribe to the calendar. So you can do group organization. But when you click on a box, and you'll see I clicked on Friday, 6:30 to 7:30 p.m., it gives me a confirmation over here. There's no title yet, and it says it's new. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to say, send heavy metal pitch to Joe, because I actually do owe Joe a pitch for heavy metal, which I am going to put on my calendar right now in real time, so I remember to do it. And I can see that I've set it for 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. Now, what's interesting about this is you'll notice on the bottom right-hand corner that it's already updated. Google Calendar is updating really fast for you, and you get that confirmation. But if you look over here, I've added Mike Fasolo. Mike is my co-writer. So I've added Mike Fasolo, and when I put this on the calendar, Mike is going to get an invitation to this very calendar invite with the date. But here's what Joe was just talking about. Hidden away here, this secret button called More Options that Joe is just referencing. Joe, you want to talk about how these notifications work and how you set them?
Sure. So basically, there's an option, there's a drop down notification or email. I prefer to get an email, and then you can choose minutes, hours, days, or weeks. So you can do that for each one. You can keep adding notifications as many as you want, because you could be talking about something that's going to happen 6 months away. One time when I worked at Lion Forge, I had a conversation with Cully Hamner because I wanted him to do a series for us, and he wasn't available, but he said, my schedule is really booked. Reach out to me in a year. And I set a calendar message for 12 months in advance.
Yeah, because
And
you can't keep that in your mind.
When the 12 months elapsed, I reach out to him, and he did 5 covers for me.
That is perfect. That's a great example.
Literally.
You can't do that in your mind.
Yeah, of course. Come on. Time is totally elastic. The world changed at a rapid rate. Who knows what a year is going to look like? He said, reach out to me in a year. I said, okay. I took that literally. And then it all worked out. So I usually set up 2 notifications for myself. One, again, will be, say 24 hours in advance. So that gives me a day of distance as a good reminder. And then the next one will be something like 2 hours in advance. So basically, like, okay, you have time to get lunch. You have time to write your notes, just like get yourself properly calibrated on what you're going to talk about. And I'm pretty analog in a variety of ways. I was actually having a conversation with a DC Comics writer named Kenny Porter on Twitter today, and we were talking about the value of pad and a pen. Still works. After thousands of years of human history, a pad and a pen still pretty much works. And so before any meeting, I'll have my notes, so I'll know what the agenda is, right? So that's basically how I handle any meeting. I give myself, kind of like a medium distance warning and a short distance warning, so I can be prepared.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I also do on my calendar is I'll block work time. I'll say this is the time that you're going to work on this particular task. And I do that so that, days is going by, like you said, time's elastic. The most pressing thing, the phone that's ringing, your focus. But when that calendar reminder comes up, now I like the notifications, but sometimes I set the email. It's like, you're supposed to write this. The best thing about that, Joe, and this is what I've always found, the best thing about that is once you free it from your mind and you've committed it to a system, your stress goes down because you're not trying to cash this, contact me in a year. Because I think the thing about Cully was he really did mean contact you in a year. It's not uncommon for an artist to go, yeah, I'm working on this book. Can you call me in 5 months? And you're like, sure, because that's how these things work.
And that lets you know that you're working with a professional who is managing their time.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's a person. I mean, if you want someone talented, it's quite likely that person is also wanted by other people and somebody else got the jump on you, which means they have a project. They know how long it will take them to complete that project. They may have 2 or 3 projects back to back because as a freelancer, that's what you want to do. You want to set up some kind of continuity of business. So while you're working on something, you're actually setting up the next 1 or 2 things you're going to be working on after that. And so I find it really helpful when people can communicate to me in that way, because I know that they're managing their time in a way that causes them less stress. And I say, okay, I will do the same in kind.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that is useful, we all have people like family, people, friends, whatever our people are. When convention season comes around, you're going to be traveling, you're going to be responding to requests. The editors that you may be giving delivery to might need something sooner. So blocking those times that when they announce New York or San Diego or some of the other events, even if you're not going, it is good to block those on your calendar so that where industry events and industry professionals are. Do you do that? Because I block the events even if I'm not going.
That's interesting. I don't block the events if I'm not going. I read 3 or 4 different comic book industry websites a day. So I think I have it pretty much ingrained. Like, this is New York Comic-Con zone. This is San Diego Comic-Con zone. One thing that's really important, if you are going to an event and that event is in a different time zone, when you land and you turn on your laptop for the first time or your phone or your iPad, whatever, make sure you change the time zone on your calendar or your life is about to become a disaster.
Yeah. Yeah.
Switch it from Eastern to Pacific or whatever it is so that everything just stays on pace.
I love that. All right, Joe. So we're going to keep moving on. We're doing good. So we got the calendar. I will note that you can put notes. You can link. Mike Fasolo and I actually do share a Google Drive where we co-author our materials. You can format it. You can put attachments. There's a lot of things that you can do, and it essentially synchronizes. I'm getting bounced. You hear me bouncing?
No, you sounded fine to me.
Okay, I feel like I'm getting audio bounce. But we can put all these things. The key thing here is these color codes and these different calendars that you can set will make it very easy for you to manage visually your Google Calendar. So get used to using those labels. They also work with your Gmail. You'll see that the event was saved. You can undo it, you can edit it, but there it is on your calendar. Now, if you are like me, I use an Android. And I like my Android widgets that preview it. I actually have the calendar on my home screen so I can see what my day looks like. And what I do is I put it all here in the calendar. As you can well imagine, every Tuesday I have blocked out for Comic Book School Live. And that's very helpful to me to be able to see at a glance what I'm supposed to be doing, where I'm supposed to be, and you can set things to be recurring. On the right side of the calendar, and Joe, you tell me how much you've used these before, are these two funky icons. The one on the top is for Google Keep and the other is for Google To Do. Both synchronize, and you can take a quick note. Now, I like stickies. I have a version of stickies on my Windows machine through OneNote, which I'll show you in a minute. But Google Keep also allows you to put your own stickies and your own information in there. Do you have a quick notes tool that you like to use, Joe?
I do not. And I'm actually learning some things, interestingly enough, through this whole process. When it comes to notes, I feel like I usually put notes in the notes section of the appointment. So if I have to meet someone someplace, if there are particular links, so I'll actually use Google Calendar to frame Zoom link meetings, and I'll put the Zoom links
Oh,
in
nice.
notes. So I really use the notes to basically give me a mini context of what the meeting is about. And just one note I wanted to say about calendars. One thing I've actually noticed is we're talking about digital calendars a lot here, but a lot of the artists that I know, specifically the artists in comics, they have the big calendars on their wall in front of them in the studio. They really dig day at a glance. So they can look at that and really see, okay, I'm supposed to have this many pages for DC Comics by that Thursday of the week. You know, my goodness, Crisscross, Warren Ellis has talked about this back in the day. I think Sean Martinborough used to use this. I don't know anymore because I don't have any spy cameras in these people's, studios on a regular basis. But that's what I've seen artists use, the big wall at a glance calendar.
I remember when we were at Wizard, they had this enormous whiteboard with tape stripes, and you'd get a couple months at a glance, and you'd be able to see it in this central area where everybody was going. And then individual editors had their calendars at a glance. And that was how things stayed synchronized. So I think a lot of people that came through the industry, like yourself, you're a writer now, but you came through the editorial system. So you think visually, you look up and you see your calendar, there it is. And I think that that's extremely helpful. Analog works. It never loses power. It never runs out of battery.
That's a fact.
So, Joe, as we start to move along, I think one of the cool things that I would like to note. So I have an Android. Actually, I have a Pixel Android. That's the one that Google makes. If you use the Google app where you talk into Google, and I'm not going to set everybody's phone off by look at this. World domination needs a wall at a glance calendar, and there's that.
That's a fact.
So one of the cool things is the default for your Android. If you talk into and say HEYGOOLE, I don't want to set off everybody's phone, and you start to talk and you say take a note, it will send it to this notes, Joe.
Nice.
So while sometimes you're at a light or you're thinking of something, my phone actually works with it off. I don't even have to. If I said those words, my phone would light up. I can be in the kitchen cutting up onions, and I can say take a note, and it'll send it here. And it's literally a note. And then it works on Androids, Apple. There's this is considered the web app, and you get a Chrome extension. I'll talk about the extension in a minute, but the next thing I want to point out is directly below it, you'll see is something called tasks. Now that's a lot like what you have, Joe, are tasks. Cool thing about tasks and notes and calendar is they can all work through Gmail. You can actually email a task or a calendar item, or just manually add it here and then synchronize it. And this also is a lifesaver if you need to take a note fast and you get used to your tools. These tools synchronize beautifully. Your Apple people will have a similar experience, but I'm all PC, Windows, and all Android, and I find these tools to be amazingly useful. Joe, have you ever played at all with these?
Not really. I do have an Android phone and I do have a PC. I also have an iPad that I use mostly for reading and graphics. And, one of the things that I do is I just make sure to have all the app extensions
Yeah.
so that I don't have to keep going through the browser.
Mhm.
If you have all the different app extensions, and that's my phone falling, through Google Play, then it's easier for you to interact with all the different features. If you try to do everything through the browser, it's like operating at a snail's pace. It's not as robust.
Yeah, and both the tasks and the Google Keep will give you a little droplet, an extra droplet on your Android that you don't actually even have to open the app. You just hit it, so you don't open the app, and then it saves you 2 steps. You just do the task right from there, and again, it synchronizes with voice commands, which are just amazing.
Nice.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Okay. I by my day job, we use Microsoft Office, so we use Outlook for our email. And with Office and all Windows machines comes this thing called OneNote. And OneNote is this amazing tool that just keeps getting better and better. It's lightweight and it's fast. It's cross-platform. It's desktop. It's web. It's mobile. It is amazing. If you look, I created a sample notebook just to show you today what this is about. I might just open the sample notebook and then I'm going to say, okay, here are my stories, my Kickstarter, my pitches, and then organized within there are like binders. And in this case, I say, oh, this is the midlife crisis comic. And then I open it, and now I can open this little window here and put Crisis Saves the World. That's the cover. But I can keep adding these windows within here, or I can add below and say, this is my Super Kitty Saves the World. This are my Spider-Man ideas. And what's amazing about this, Joe, is the search, which I've kind of covered here with the arrow, is just incredible. It is an incredible search function that will make it so much easier. You can set alarms. And one of the things here, you can see this little icon here. This is where you get your sticky notes in Windows now. So Windows, and it's rooted in Windows 10 and Windows 11, that when you use these notes, it looks like stickies on a Mac, which is a great feature that Windows lost, but now it synchronizes with OneNote. And I will note that when I'm on the go and I don't have a physical notebook, like I do really try to travel with notebooks, but the best notebook is the one you have on you, right, Joe? You've ever taken an idea or a phone number on a scrap of paper, OneNote is an amazingly efficient tool. It takes a little time, and I will recommend people, if you don't know how to use it, go watch one of those YouTube videos. They're about 10 minutes long. You'll be blown away by the power and the intuitiveness of this tool once you get started. Joe, have you ever used OneNote at all in your work?
I have not used OneNote. My wife runs 2 nonprofit organizations, and I believe she uses OneNote. She has a lot of different multi-layer storage systems, and she also deals in setting up correspondences in advance to send them out at timed intervals. I will say that I bet that a lot of people have a Spider-Man idea like set up in their folder because it's
They should.
So I think that's pretty cool to see that you have one. I think that's cool.
It is, and when you're working on a book, you can set up a shared OneNote, like a shared drive in Google, and sometimes you'll say, here's who I would cast in this role, and you can put that picture in there. It does everything from audio capture. It doesn't. Google is rooted, Google Keep and their other tools. They're amazingly fast on Android. OneNote is best on desktop, really. I have to, just say it's good, but it's better on desktop or through the browser.
That's good to know.
Yeah. So getting close toward the end here, Joe. So the one thing that I will note, and you talked about browser extensions, for people not familiar with the concept. So I keep a OneNote browser extension. So if I'm surfing, Joe, and I go, oh, that's really cool, I will click this icon and it will prompt me to open that last folder. They'll just say which folder, and I can save just the text. I can save a screenshot, or I can save the full page. It gives me a couple different choices. I can save something real quick to my Google Drive, or edit something very quickly. This puzzle piece is the Google extensions. You can add Google Keep, you can add Google Notes, you can get your calendar from here. People who are not familiar with extensions, they work on all of the major browsers, pretty much the same way. You go to a store, you download it, you install it. Obviously, only install things that you trust. But these are indispensable tools. So, Joe, you say you saw an article in the New York Times. I see something on the New York Times. I'm like, I got to get this. I will save it. And sometimes, if you don't have a Times subscription, you're looking at the 1 or 3 free articles that you can see per week. You
That's
save
right.
the text, and you can then read it later in OneNote.
That makes perfect sense. That's great. I know for myself, when I'm on my laptop, if I see something that I want to engage later, I will immediately bookmark it. So the whole part of emailing things to myself, that's something that's happening when I'm interfacing with my Android. And I think it's a Samsung 22. So that's like my friend when I'm on the move. But when I'm at the desk, I like to bookmark things. For me, that's pretty quick. And then I'll definitely get back to it later.
Yeah, you just, I guess, you just hit the star and then you go just look at your bookmarks, right?
That's it. That's it.
Yeah, so these are helpful. But again, if you want to synchronize this with Google Keep or Google To Do, Google Keep does the same thing as OneNote, which is you can just save the text of an article and come back. You see something in Wikipedia, you're like, oh, I got to totally use this in my next story idea. I want to save that. I grab it and I save it offline in the event that it gets taken off the website, which that happens. So,
yes, that's.
So, Joe, this was using tools to meet your goals for your comic book career in life. But I want to prompt you, because you and I were talking before the show. We are both big readers, and we talk about technology, and books are a technology. They are familiar technology, but they are indeed a technology. And over the holiday break, you reminded me, and I opened this book up and I started to reread it, but you had shown some of the tools that you are going to use to nourish your mind and motivate you. You want to talk about some of the tools in your tool shed?
Yeah, sure. So what happened was, over the Christmas holiday, Barnes & Noble always has a big sale between the 26th and the 31st. Hardcovers are 50% off and things like that. So that's when I load up and go. And I bought a variety of books. And I mean, in addition to Winter Soldier by Ed Brubaker and Butch Guice and Michael Lark, I had to get Atomic Habits, right? This is a really great book. And James Clear, who wrote this, he's been doing a lot of podcast interviews lately. I think he just had an interview with Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss is a great podcast series.
Yeah, I love his podcast.
He did a 2-part interview with Todd McFarlane, which is just required listening. Yeah. And so one of the things that Atomic Habits gets into is the idea that large-scale drastic change at the turn of a dime is unrealistic towards growth. And what you have to think of is incremental growth over a period of time. So one of the things that James Clear puts forth is the idea of improvement at 1%. Mm-hmm. Improve at this thing at 1%. If you go to the gym, improve your performance by 1%. If you are writing, improve your output by 1%. And 1% over a period of time will lead to a double-digit percentage improvement, right? That's much more manageable. And it's so small that it's not even something that you can measure on a regular basis, but you will see the results over a period of time. And so that's a way to create a habit in increments. The book that you were referring to, The Power of Habit, which is also up there, one of the things that I really love about that book. And I remember seeing a variety of entrepreneurs speak about this, um, from Pharrell to the departed Anthony Bourdain, God rest his soul. And it was, two ideas. One idea is that habits, because they're rote behavior, they don't take up as much brain energy. So the more habits you have, or the more things that you do regularly, because even the term habit can be interpreted in different ways, the more it frees up your mind for creativity. So I'm the type of person who my first breakfast is usually yogurt with fruit and nuts and honey. That's just like automatic, right? So I don't have to go through that mental struggle of, hey, what am I going to make for breakfast every morning? That saves up brain time. That brain space can go towards whatever I'm writing that morning. So that's one thing. The second thing is understanding at what parts of the day you are most productive at what you do. So I know for myself, I'm a better writer between 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. Once we go after 2 p.m., my brain starts going into a different place. And so the afternoons are better for me to do script editing or for me to have calls. But in terms of writing time, I really go by, one thing that Walter Mosley said in his master class was 2 to 3 hours every morning, early morning, right? Before the world starts. So basically 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., prime time, prime writing block. So that's one of the things that, these different people are talking about. They're talking about systems that are based on incremental change and systems that free up brain space for creative exploration, for imagination. One of the things that actually goes in conjunction with that, and this is something that Ariana Huffington spoke about years ago, is imagination is directly connected to sleep. You need a certain amount of sleep so that your imagination can be robust to a certain degree. So this whole idea about, oh, I'm only going to operate on 3 hours or 4 hours sleep a day. Yeah, that's good for Batman, but that's not really good for human beings, right? It's not sexy. It's not romantic. It's actually detrimental to your existence, and it's deteriorating. So try to get at least 6 hours of sleep, folks.
I find that the better I sleep, the better the ideas are. And sometimes if I have to solve a puzzle, I will try to think of what the problem I'm trying to solve is. And I'm literally working on a story, and I was like, what is the twist I'm looking for? Woke up, I'm showering, I'm like, oh yeah. So my brain was still working while I was asleep.
Yep. And I'll tell you two things. You mentioned one of them. I am a big advocate of showers. I solve a number of creative problems in the shower, right? Because
Yeah.
you're actually not distracted by the outside world and the water's just hitting you and giving you some relief. And you can actually solve problems in the shower. That's one place. The second place that you can solve problems is in the gym,
Yeah,
right?
you're always there. You're like,
Yeah, listen, got it. It's really connected, right? You can be feeling sluggish, and on the way to the gym, you don't want to go. But once you get there, you start your cardio in the beginning, and then you get into a rhythm, and the endorphins start happening. You actually set yourself up to become supercharged when you're done, and you start getting more creative. So these are things I honestly highly recommend, and they have worked for me because we're not meant to be sedentary creatures. And the kind of lifestyles that we're talking about, whether it's the at-home lifestyle because of the pandemic or going to the office, if you're working at Disney, Bob Iger just told you you're going to start going back to the office 4 out of 5 days a week. You need to get up and be active sometimes. And so I really highly recommend showers and gym memberships that you use.
that you used. Well, Joe, those are tools. So it could be sleep, habit, committing to certain amount of learning. We've talked about this in previous episodes, and I did promise the audience, Joe, that we had a special announcement that will pass the baton over to you. It's about getting help. We talk a lot about getting help. Joe, why don't you tell us what the big announcement is that the service that you're providing to help people?
Sure. So basically, it's a new year. So we're all pretty supercharged. People are coming out of hibernation from the holidays and they're engaging their ideas, their projects. And so one of the things that I do is I do consulting. So I do consulting with creators on their pitches, on their ideas that they're setting up for projects that they're going to push out to various publishing houses, whether it's in the direct market comic book industry or whether it's in the trade publishing houses where there's just like explosive exponential graphic novel growth. And so this week I'm having an ad campaign that I'll be doing throughout the rest of the work week. And it's basically, consulting with people. You have a good pitch. Do you want to make it better? You have characters that are marketable, but do you want to make them unforgettable, right? Because we're talking about such a high competition creative environment that your characters need to be memorable. Your idea has to be able to have unexpected twists and turns. You have to have a character journey at the center of things. There are a lot of people that, as my clients, when I first talk to them, they don't know what the theme of their project is. And that's okay. We'll take that journey together. And once we identify your theme, we've identified the foundation of your entire story, and all of your characters are going to support or they're going to combat that theme. So this is an ad. And basically, if you go to josephillidge.com, there's a section called consultations, and there's a page called contact, and you can reach out to me. I usually respond to emails within 72 hours. And this is a really good time because, again, it's the start of the year. I think, the comic book industry just continues to be vibrant. There's more publishers, and even Kickstarter, there are a lot more people publishing through Kickstarter. But even with Kickstarter, you have the same responsibility of quality that you have if you were sending a Spy Master pitch to Marvel, or if you were sending a Sugar and Spike pitch to DC Comics, right? You have to have a certain level of quality. And so I provide that service. It's something that I really enjoy doing, and I really get a sense of gratification knowing that I've helped creators refine their projects and make them better. And when I see that they have successfully placed projects that we've discussed at publishers, I know that I helped deliver on a promise and helped a creator, make their dream tangible.
I could say unsolicited, Joe, you've given me feedback on some of my work, and you're very insightful. And I have to tell you that getting somebody who really understands the breadth of storytelling, but also the business that this is going to be this is a commercial endeavor. You're not just painting or writing for fun. You're putting together something that has to sell. So I do fully endorse Joe. I was thrilled to see that this is a service. You can find out more at Joe's website, josephillidge.com. And seriously, go check out his website. His credits are unbelievable, and you will be motivated. Next week, we'll have a special guest to be announced. We're waiting for the confirmation on that. But if you do not already subscribe to Comic Book School, definitely do that. That's it, Joe. We had a great show. Thank you for coming on short notice. I genuinely appreciate it. You're a good friend to me, a good friend to the Comic Book School community. And where can they find you, Joe? Where's the best place to get in touch with you?
All right. Well, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. And I hope, our conversation was able to, just help various creators think about their systems differently. They can find me. josephillidge.com is my website. On Twitter, as you see there on the Chiron, it's Joseph P. Illidge. On Facebook, I'm Joe Illidge. LinkedIn, Joseph Philip Illidge. Instagram, Illmaster1.
There's a lot of different ones. We'll find you, Joe. If you go to your website,
yeah,
we'll find
exactly.
You, right?
I'm really trying to hide, but I'm doing it badly. I'm doing it very badly. So you'll be able to find me. It won't be a problem.
Joe, you're an awesome guest. And of course, people should check out your other interview that we did with you. We'll provide a link in the show notes for your other YouTube appearance. And of course, those of you who remember seeing Joe at New York Comic Con, we're getting ready to start running those, pulling those clips together. So you'll see the event that Joe. So Joe, thank you so much. Stay in the green room for a minute, and I will be right there.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
So that's it. I mean, I hope this was helpful to you. We're now at the end of our 3-part series where we talk about how you're going to manage your creative career. And of course, part of my goal this year with Comic Book School is to make things a little bit different. You'll notice that we're going to be doing a little bit more on the business of comics and also ways that you can accelerate the way you break in, stay in, and of course, network. There are some great resources out there that we will touch on with creators, but we also want to know what it's like to be a creator and what it takes to be successful. So definitely be sure to check out and subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate everything and all of you coming. So thanks so much. We'll see you again next time.